The street night air was heavy and quiet. A thin layer of mist drifted above the ground. Curling around the dull yellow streetlights, the street stretched long and empty, cracked with age, its silence broken only by the distant hum of cars. On a faraway highway, a man walked alone down the sidewalk. He was tall, his shoulders broad, his step steady. In one hand, he carried a small grocery bag. It swung gently as he moved, filled with bread, apples, and a carton of milk. In his other arm, tucked close to his side, was a folded cap dark green, the kind that carried stories of discipline and sacrifice. His name was Marcus. To anyone who passed by, he might have seemed like an ordinary man coming back from the store. His clothes were plain, a black hoodie, worn jeans, and heavy boots. But his boots still carried the dust of training grounds, and his eyes still carried the weight of battles fought far from this quiet street. He was a U.S. Army soldier, just returned home, trying to find peace in simple things again. The street was familiar, yet strange. Old brick houses lined the road, their windows glowing with faint light. Curtains shifted as families settled in for the evening. Marcus breathed slowly, his breath visible in the cool night air. For him, every step was both comfort and sadness. Comfort, because this was home soil. Sadness, because even here, he felt out of place. He remembered the sound of helicopters in foreign skies, the sharp commands, the roar of distant fire. Out there, he wore his uniform proudly. Out there, people saluted him, trusted him, and saw him as a protector. But here back in the city where he was born, he was just another black man, walking alone at night, and he knew too well what that often meant. At the corner of the street, the police officers stood near their car. Their figures looked sharp under the light, hands resting near their belts. They were talking quietly at first, but when Marcus came closer, their eyes followed him. The chatter died. Silence hung thick. Marcus noticed them, but kept his eyes forward. He had learned long ago not to meet stares for too long. The grocery bag rustled as he shifted it to his other hand. His heart beat a little faster, but his face remained calm. He told himself, just walk. Just keep walking. You have nothing to hide. Inside, though, he felt the weight of memory. He thought of times he had walked into villages overseas, careful not to make the wrong move. Strange how it felt the same here, on his own street. The officers whispered something to each other. One of them stepped forward slightly, his body tense. Marcus caught the movement from the corner of his eye, but he did not stop. He had done nothing wrong. He wanted to believe that would be enough. The houses around him stood in silence, watching with their dark windows. Somewhere, a dog barked and then fell quiet. The night grew colder, heavier, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Marcus tightened his grip on the grocery bag. He thought about the food inside. It wasn't much, but it reminded him of home. His mother used to send him letters when he was deployed, always asking, "Are you eating enough? Are you staying strong?" He had smiled then, even while sitting in dusty barracks. Tonight, though, those simple apples and bread felt like proof of survival, proof that life could still be ordinary. But the street was not ordinary tonight. It was a stage, and he felt the invisible eyes of fear and suspicion pressing on him. His boots echoed with each step, the sound bouncing off walls, step after step. Closer to the corner, closer to the officers. One officer adjusted his belt, his hand brushing the holster. Marcus noticed the movement and exhaled slowly. He reminded himself, stay calm, speak clear if they stop you. Don't raise your voice. Don't make sudden moves. He had given commands to soldiers younger than him, told them to stay brave in the face of danger. But here, on this street, he had to give the same commands to himself. Marcus's eyes lifted for a moment, looking at the sky. Stars flickered faintly above the city haze. He thought about freedom, about what it meant. He had risked his life for it, fought for it, defended it. Yet, on this quiet street, under the eyes of two men in uniform, freedom felt fragile. He walked closer, his breath steady, his jaw firm. He hoped with all his heart that tonight would pass without trouble, that he could go home, eat his simple meal, and rest his weary body. But the street had other plans. The confrontation. Marcus reached the corner, the grocery bag still swinging lightly in his hand. The mist around the streetlights gave everything a strange glow, like the world was holding its breath. He told himself again, just walk, just get home. But the officers didn't let him pass. Hey, you, one of them shouted. his voice sharp enough to cut the night. Marcus froze for a second, then turned his head slowly, his heart knocked hard against his chest. Though his face stayed calm, he had learned that calmness could save a life. "Yes, officer," he asked. His voice was steady, quiet, respectful. The taller cop stepped closer, his boots hitting the pavement with a heavy sound. His hand rested near his holster. "What are you doing out here?" he demanded. Marcus blinked. "Just walking home. Bought some food." He lifted the grocery bag a little, showing the bread and apples inside. The second cop, younger, narrowed his eyes. "At this time of night, around here?" His tone was not curious, it was accusing. Marcus took a slow breath. He had been trained to handle pressure, to keep steady even in chaos. But this wasn't a battlefield overseas. This was home, and still he felt like the enemy. "I lived blocks away," Marcus said, his words simple, his tone even. "Just trying to get home, sir." The taller cop scoffed. "Don't get smart." He moved closer, his shadow stretching across Marcus's chest. The streetlight caught the officer's face, hard eyes, jaw clenched, anger simmering beneath the surface. Marcus felt the tension rising. He set the grocery bag gently on the ground so nothing would break. Both his hands came up slowly, palms open, fingers spread. "I don't want any trouble," he said softly. The younger cop smirked. "Then stop acting like you're hiding something." Marcus's stomach tightened. He had nothing to hide. Yet, he could feel the trap closing. His dark skin, his quiet walk, his presence on the street, that was all the officers needed to see guilt. "I'm not hiding anything," Marcus answered. His voice was low, calm, but each word carried weight. The taller officer's patience snapped. He shoved Marcus in the chest. The force sent him back a step, his boots scraping against the cracked sidewalk. His heart raced, but his body stayed steady. "Why'd you flinch?" the cop barked. Marcus swallowed. His jaw tightened. He could feel heat burning in his chest, not just from fear, but from anger, deep anger that he had to swallow to stay alive. "I didn't flinch," he said quietly. The younger officer circled behind him now, his flashlight beam running up Marcus's back. The light made him feel like prey under a hunter's aim. "Check his pockets." The younger one muttered. Marcus turned his head slightly. "You don't have to search me. I've done nothing wrong." The taller officer's eyes hardened. "You refusing?" Marcus's mind raced. He thought of the oaths he had taken, the flag he had saluted. He had fought to protect freedoms like the freedom to walk home without fear. And yet, here he was, cornered. "No, sir," Marcus said carefully. "I'm not refusing. I'm just telling you I have nothing." But his calm words were gasoline to their anger. The taller cop suddenly grabbed Marcus by the shoulder and spun him around. The bag on the ground tipped, apples spilling and rolling across the street. One apple struck the curb, splitting open, its sweet smell mixed with the bitter taste of the night. Marcus's arms were forced behind his back. Pain shot up his shoulders as the officer yanked his wrists together. "I didn't do anything," Marcus started, his voice breaking now. "Shut up," the cop barked, slamming him against the cold hood of the patrol car. The metal burned against Marcus's cheek. A few houses away, curtains moved. Neighbors were watching now. Shadows flickered in windows. A woman gasped quietly. A man cursed under his breath, but no one stepped outside. The street belonged to the uniforms. Marcus's chest pressed against the car, his breath sharp, his mind whirling. He thought of the battlefield again, the roar of bombs, the cries of wounded brothers. But this was worse. This was home, where he should have been safe. The younger officer leaned close to his ear, his words like venom. "You think you can walk around here like you own the place? Not tonight." Marcus closed his eyes. His pride burned. His body ached, but he forced his voice to stay calm. "Please, I just want to go home." The taller officer slammed his baton against the car's hood, inches from Marcus's hand. The sound cracked through the night, echoing down the street. "Home?" The officer sneered. "We'll see about that." Marcus's heart sank. He knew what was coming. The street had become a cage, the night an enemy, and though he wore no uniform now, inside he was still a soldier standing tall, even while cornered. The confrontation was no longer about suspicion. It was about power, and Marcus knew. Power, once abused, could destroy everything in its path. The mist thickened around them, wrapping the scene like a cruel curtain. The quiet neighborhood, the broken apple, The frozen crowd all waited in silence for the storm about to break. The beating night cracked open with the first blow. Marcus had barely spoken when the taller officer's fist slammed into his jaw. His head snapped sideways, his vision flashing white. The shock made him stumble, his cheek pressed hard against the cold hood of the car. His heart pounded like a drum inside his chest. The grocery bag lay on the ground, spilling its contents across the street. Red apples rolled into the gutter. Bread was crushed under one boot. Milk leaked slowly, spreading like a pale shadow on the dark pavement. Everything that was ordinary, everything simple and human about his night, had been destroyed in a second. The second officer joined in. His baton rose high, then came down with a crack against Marcus's ribs. Pain tore through his body, sharp and burning. He gritted his teeth, refusing to scream. He had faced worse on battlefields. But this pain was different. It was not war. It was humiliation. Stay down, the taller cop barked, though Marcus was already pinned. Another strike, this time against his back. His breath caught. His knees buckled. His body leaned helplessly against the car as the baton came again, harder, angrier. Marcus raised his arms to protect his face. His skin stung where the blows landed. His muscles screamed. Still, he tried to speak. Please, I didn't. Knee drove into his stomach. Air rushed out of his lungs. He gasped, choking on his own breath. Don't talk back. The younger cop spat, his face twisted with rage. Marcus's body trembled, but his spirit fought to remain strong. Stay calm, stay alive, he told himself. He thought of his mother's smile, of his father's proud handshake when he first wore the uniform. He thought of his fellow soldiers, men and women who had stood by his side in deserts and mountains, who believed in brotherhood, who believed in sacrifice. But here, in the middle of his own street, those values meant nothing to the men attacking him. The taller officer grabbed Marcus by the back of the hoodie, yanking him upright, only to slam him down again onto the hood. His head hit metal with a dull thud. Stars danced in his vision. Warm blood trickled from his lip, sliding down to his chin. Search him, the younger officer shouted. Rough hands patted his pockets, yanked at his jeans, dug through his jacket. They found nothing. Still, the violence did not stop. Marcus felt every strike as a message. You are less. You are unwanted. You are powerless. Neighbors were gathering at windows now, faces pale against glass. A child's voice whispered, Mama, why are they hurting him? The mother pulled the curtain closed. Too afraid to answer, Marcus's spirit wavered. He wanted to shout, to reveal who he truly was, to stop them with a single truth. I am a soldier of this nation. I fight for you, even now. But pride held his tongue. Why should he have to beg for respect? Why should his service be the only reason for his humanity to be seen? The baton came again. His shoulder burned. His knees gave out. He slid halfway to the ground, catching himself weakly on the edge of the car. The taller officer snarled, his face red with effort. You think you can lie to us? You think we don't see what you're really up to? Marcus's voice cracked. I'm just going home. His words were barely above a whisper. The younger cop sneered. Home? People like you don't belong here. Those words cut deeper than the blows. His body ached, but his soul carried the heavier wound. He thought of the American flag stitched on his uniform, the flag he had saluted countless times. How bitter it felt now, knowing the men who claimed to serve and protect could not see him as one of their own. The beating grew slower, but harder, as if each strike was meant to leave a mark not just on his body, but on his dignity. His breath came in ragged gasps, his blood smearing the metal of the car. A baton raised again. But then, wait, a voice whispered from the crowd. It was soft, almost drowned by the night. What it carried. The officers hesitated for a second, turning their heads toward the cluster of shadows by the houses. The crowd was bigger now, silent, horrified. Their eyes were wide, their hands gripping phones. Recording. Marcus lifted his head weakly, his eyes, swollen and heavy, met theirs. Shame washed over him, not for himself, but for what was being done to him. He wanted to stand tall. He wanted to remind them that he had defended their right to live free. But his body betrayed him, shaking, bleeding, bent over a car under the weight of rage. The taller officer growled. Back inside, he shouted at the crowd. His baton waved in the air, daring anyone to step forward. But no one moved. The silence was a weapon now. pressing down on all of them. The crowd did not step forward, but they did not look away. Marcus knew something was shifting. The storm of violence had not ended, but its power was weakening. The truth was coming, and when it did, everything would change. The witness street no longer felt empty. One by one, doors had opened and windows had slid up. The sound of fists and batons had carried far into the night, drawing eyes and ears that could not pretend any longer. Neighbors leaned against fences, children peeked out from behind curtains, and faces glowed faintly in the soft light of cell phone screens. The street, once quiet, was now alive with silent judgment. Marcus, bruised and bent against the hood of the car, felt their eyes on him. The weight of their stares pressed heavier than the officers. Knee on his back, his bloody lips trembled, not from weakness, but from shame. He had fought for this country, risked everything for strangers. Yet here he was a spectacle, a beaten man on his own street. The taller officer noticed the crowd and his anger flared. Back inside, he roared, his voice breaking the silence. His baton waved through the air, threatening anyone who dared to step closer. Nothing to see here, but there was everything to see. The crowd didn't move. They didn't speak, but their silence was louder than words. The hum of cell phone cameras filled the night, a quiet rebellion against the violence on display. A woman whispered into her phone, "They're hurting him. Please, send someone." Her voice shook. But she didn't lower it. A boy, no older than 10, clutched his mother's hand tightly. "Mama," he asked, eyes wide, "why are they doing this?" His mother swallowed hard, her face pale in the glow of the streetlight. She had no answer. She only pulled him closer, shielding his eyes. Marcus heard the boy's question. His heart broke. He wanted to tell the child, "This isn't right. Don't let this be your world." But his swollen lips could barely form words. His silence became his message. Look at what they do. Look at what they choose to see. The younger officer, jittery under the gaze of the crowd, leaned close to the taller one. "They're recording us," he muttered. Sweat rolled down his temple. "This doesn't look good." The taller officer gritted his teeth. His pride was burning hotter than the night air. He refused to back down in front of his audience. "Let them record." He spat. "We're doing our job." But the words sounded weak, even to him. From the edge of the street, a man stepped forward. He was older, with gray hair and tired eyes, wearing a faded jacket. His voice shook but carried. "He hasn't done anything. Leave him alone." The officers turned their heads sharply. The older man froze, but did not retreat. His courage trembled like a candle flame in the wind, but still it burned. Behind him, murmurs rose from the crowd, soft at first, then stronger. "Yeah, let him go. He didn't do anything. Stop hitting him." The street filled with voices, fragile but united. Marcus's head lifted slightly, his vision blurred, but he could see them, neighbors, strangers, people who moments ago had been silent, now daring to speak. His heart, bruised and aching, felt a flicker of strength. He was not alone. The taller officer slammed his baton against the car. Again, a desperate attempt to scare them. "Stay back," he barked, but his voice no longer carried the same power. It cracked, heavy with the awareness that the crowd was no longer afraid. The younger officer pulled nervously at his partner's arm. "We need to stop. This is getting out of hand." His voice dropped, almost pleading. "If they find out who he is," Marcus's ears caught the words, even through the haze of pain. His chest tightened. The truth was close now, ready to tear the night apart. The crowd edged closer, not with their feet, but with their voices. Anger mixed with fear, outrage with sorrow. Phones glowed brighter, lenses aimed straight at the officers. The mist thickened, curling around the street like a ghostly witness. The air was charged, the silence between shouts heavy with suspense. Everyone seemed to know something was about to break. Marcus, still pinned against the hood, found the strength to speak. His voice was hoarse, barely louder than a whisper, but it carried enough. "I am a soldier," he said. The words hung in the air, fragile and powerful. The crowd gasped. Murmurs rippled through them like a wave. Did he say soldier? He's army, my God. The officers froze, their hands stiff, their breath caught. The truth had slipped free, and there was no pulling it back. The street was no longer just a street. It had become a courtroom, and the witnesses had already chosen their side. The freeze of street fell silent after Marcus's words. "I am a soldier." The sentence lingered in the mist like a bell tolling at midnight. Every neighbor heard it. Every child clutching their parent's hand heard it. And most of all, both officers heard it. For a moment, their bodies froze. The taller officer's baton, midair, hung uncertainly. The younger one's hand, which had been gripping Marcus's shoulder, loosened. It was as if time itself had stuttered, unsure of what to do next. The crowd gasped, whispers spreading quickly. A soldier? He's Army. Dear God, they're beating a soldier. Phones tilted closer, recorded every detail. Marcus's torn hoodie, his bruised face, the apples crushed on the pavement, the milk spreading like a pail wound across the street. The taller officer blinked hard, his jaw tightening. His anger had been steady before, fueled by arrogance, but now it trembled with doubt. He knew what it meant if this man was telling the truth. Soldiers were honored, respected, protected in the eyes of the public. To harm one was not just violence, it was scandal. The younger officer stepped back slightly. His breathing was fast. His eyes darted between Marcus and the crowd. His voice cracked. You got proof of that? Slowly, painfully, Marcus shifted. His swollen hand moved toward the pocket of his jeans, but he hesitated. Any sudden move could still be twisted into resisting. The crowd saw his struggle. Murmurs grew louder. Let him show you. He said he's a soldier. Stop. Before you make it worse. Marcus's chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. Every rib ached. His lip bled freely down his chin. Still, his voice came again, soft but steady. Back pocket. My ID. Military ID. The younger cop swallowed hard. He didn't move. His partner's pride was a wall, holding him still, refusing to yield. The crowd pressed further with their voices. Check it. Let him prove it. He's telling the truth. Finally, with stiff, jerky movements, the taller officer yanked Marcus's wallet from his pocket. He flipped it open, his eyes scanning the worn, laminated card, and then he stopped. The name was there, the rank, the branch, the photograph of Marcus, clean-cut and proud in uniform. Staring back, the emblem of the United States Army gleamed. Under the dim STREDLIGHT dot, the officer's throat went dry. His hand shook slightly as he held the card. His baton slipped from his other hand, clattering to the pavement. The sound rang out sharp and hollow, echoing off the houses. The younger cop leaned over his shoulder. His eyes widened. Oh, God, he whispered. The crowd erupted. Gasps, curses, furious shouts filled the street. He is a soldier. You animals. Shame on you. Children clung tighter to their parents. Adults raised their phones higher, angrier now. Neighbors who had been frozen in fear stepped closer, no longer afraid of uniforms that had turned into disgrace. Marcus lifted his head slowly from the hood of the car. His eyes, swollen but steady, locked on the taller officer. He didn't need to speak. His silence was louder than any words and accusation, a demand, a wound. The taller officer stammered, his lips parting and closing without sound. His face, flushed red, then pale. He looked at Marcus, then at the crowd, then at his partner. He could feel the walls closing in, every recording phone like a jury waiting for the verdict. The younger officer whispered urgently, What do we do? What do we do? His voice cracked with panic, but no answer came. The crowd's fury swelled like a wave. He served this country. That man defended your freedom, and this is how you treat him. Marcus's chest heaved as he pulled himself upright. His body trembled, but his spine straightened. He was battered, broken in flesh, but unbroken in spirit. His voice came low, like thunder before a storm. You protect people. That's your oath, same as mine. He paused, blood staining his teeth as he spoke. But you broke it tonight. The taller officer's lips trembled. His baton still lay on the ground. Abandoned, useless. The weight of Marcus's words pressed down heavier than any weapon. The younger one stepped back farther, as if distance could wash away his guilt. But guilt had already clung to his skin, written into the eyes of every witness. The mist curled tighter around the scene. The air buzzed with anger, sorrow, and shame. For the first time, the officers felt powerless, not because they lacked weapons, but because truth had turned against them. Marcus stood as tall as his injuries allowed. His military ID gleamed faintly in the taller officer's trembling hand. The crowd shouted louder, demanding justice, demanding apology, demanding change. And for the first time that night, the officers did not move. They did not strike. They did not shout. They froze. The awakening street had changed. Where once there was mist and silence. Now there was fire in every voice and every stare. The crowd no longer whispered. They shouted with anger, disbelief, and fury. Cell phones glowed like torches in the night, capturing every detail, every bruise, every drop of blood. The officers, once so loud and commanding, stood frozen like statues. The taller one still clutched Marcus's ID card, his knuckles pale, his lips trembling as if words might come, but refused to leave. The younger one backed away, shame dripping from his posture. Their power was gone. Marcus stood slowly, his body battered, his breath shallow. Every step was painful, but every step was proof that he was not broken. His face, swollen and cut, lifted toward the crowd, his eyes locked with theirs. Neighbors, strangers, children, parents, and for the first time that night, he felt their strength flow into him. He wiped the blood from his lip with the back of his hand. The motion was small, but it was enough to remind everyone watching this man was still standing. The older neighbor who had first spoken now stepped forward again. His voice shook, but it carried, steady and strong. "You should be ashamed of yourselves," he told the officers. "This man fought for this country, and you beat him like an animal." The words struck harder than any fist. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd, growing louder, sharper. "Disgrace, cowards. You don't deserve the badge." The taller officer lowered his head. He had barked orders his whole career, demanded respect with his voice and his uniform. But now, surrounded by witnesses and truth, he could only stand in silence. His pride, once his weapon, had turned to chains around his neck. Marcus turned to face him. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the street like a drumbeat. "I wore that uniform to protect every life in this country, yours too." He paused, his breath heavy. "But tonight, you treated me like nothing. Not a man, not a soldier, just a body to break." The officer's face tightened, shame flickering in his eyes. He could not look at Marcus. He could not look at the crowd. His baton lay forgotten on the pavement, a symbol of his weakness. The younger officer whispered, "We should leave." His voice was small, hollow. He wanted to escape the weight of what they had done, but there was nowhere to run. The truth was already written on every phone, every witness, every broken piece of bread on the ground. Marcus's gaze swept over the crowd. He saw the children staring with wide eyes, the mothers holding them close, the fathers clenching fists of anger, but standing still. He saw fear, sorrow, and outrage, but also unity. For once, the street was together, every voice rising for justice. "Remember this," Marcus said, turning back to the officers. His voice cracked, but it was strong enough to pierce the night. "You carry a badge. I carry scars. Both are supposed to mean protection, but tonight, only one of us remembered the oath." Gasps filled the air. The words cut deep. The taller officer's hand shook as he shoved Marcus's ID back into his pocket. He said nothing. The younger one lowered his head, his shame plain. They both stood still, trapped by the crowd's fury. Marcus bent slowly, his bruised fingers gathering the crushed bread, the bruised apples, the carton of milk leaking onto the ground. Each piece was heavy, soaked with the night's violets. He placed them back in the bag, one by one, as if restoring some fragile dignity. When he stood again, he held the bag in his hand and faced the street. The mist curled around him, but now it seemed less like a cage and more like a veil lifting. He looked not like a victim, but like a survivor, a soldier who had fought another kind of battle and still remained upright. The crowd erupted not in cheers, but in a wave of voices calling for justice, calling for change, calling for truth. Some shouted at the officers, others comforted Marcus with words of respect. A young woman near the front whispered, almost in tears, "Thank you for your service. We're sorry." Marcus gave a small nod, his lips trembling but refusing to break. He did not need applause or pity. All he wanted was recognition, not as a hero, not as a soldier, but as a man who deserved dignity. The officers stood powerless, frozen in the storm they had created. They could not undo the blows, the bruises, the humiliation. The world had seen Dot and Marcus, though scarred and weary, walked slowly down the street with the crowd's eyes behind him. Each step was heavy, but each step was also freedom. He did not stumble. He did not bow. He walked forward as he always had, like a soldier,